Hi, this is Paul Slatkus, Good News Broadcast. I'm speaking to Mr. Sidney Pike. Hi, Sidney, how are you?
I'm fine, Paul. Good to talk to you.
It's great to speak with you. Sidney is one of the leaders in the broadcasting industry for very, very many years, and publishing and so on. And it's a big honor for me to get a chance to speak with you and to interview you. So thank you very much for agreeing to speak with Good News Broadcast.
I'm glad to be with you, and I appreciate the work you're doing, and it fits into the ideas that I've had when I worked with CNN around the world.
Sidney wrote a book called We Changed the World, Memoirs of a CNN Global Satellite Pioneer, and it's a very, very, it's 540 pages, and it's a Bible, I will call it, of the industry of broadcasting, along with Ted Turner. I guess Ted brought you in initially?
Yes, I was in at the beginning. He had bought a rundown UHF television station in Atlanta, Georgia in 1970. He had no business doing it because he didn't know anything about television. He was going broke in radio stations that he had bought. But he's a very aggressive guy when he has ideas. And he was losing about $1 million when he met me in 1971.
Okay. And so where were you at that time, prior to that?
I was brought to Atlanta by a company called Pacific and Southern that had just bought Channel 11 in Atlanta 3 years before, and I had worked for them in building up that station.
Okay, and where did they bring you from?
Boston, Mass. I was there 17 years, building television stations. I was the producer and director of the Braves and the Red Sox. And in those days, the Braves were in Atlanta, where they originated. And even that old favorite, Babe Ruth, played for them in the 30s.
Okay, wow. This is historic talk here. It says here, what people are saying, along with Ted Turner, Sid overcame so many skeptics, those who said it just cannot be done. Well, he and Ted and that maverick band of original staffers, right, they assembled the Did It? What is the Did It group? Those are people that made it happen?
Yes. There's one anecdote that I think your audience would like to hear.
Okay. 2
weeks after Ted hired me, I got a phone call from a station manager, a counterpart of mine, in Charlotte, North Carolina. I learned that Ted had bought a station there on the courthouse steps when he went there to buy some cameras. And his board of directors, which were mostly his buddies of the station in Atlanta, didn't want anything to do with it. So he put his own money in it, quite a bit. And he was telling me that they were going to go dark because they couldn't pay the film companies. They were going to go off the air. And he wanted me to tell Ted. I guess he didn't want to tell. So I did, and when I talked to Ted and explained to him the phone call, he turned white because he just didn't want to lose the money he had put in, which was really most of the money he had left from his inheritance when his father died. And he said, Sid, what can I do? What can I do? Well, I had no idea. I mean, I didn't expect to be presented with how do I save a television station. I had produced shows, I directed shows, I created shows for television.
Right.
And so, but I'm the kind of guy that has to think about something for a while.
Okay.
And sure enough, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I jumped up, I had an idea. And I presented it to Ted the next morning, and I said, look, if you go off the air, the city of Charlotte will lose the fourth television station. They have the three networks, of course. And I said, why? They wouldn't be able to get any movies and situation comedies and that sort of thing. Why don't you go on the air and tell the public the truth? And tell them if they send you in some money with their name and address so you can pay them back with interest and can keep you going, they'll have a fourth station. Now, this is before cable.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all the market would be the four stations.
Right.
And so we went to Charlotte, and I wrote the copy for him to do on the air Friday night and all day Saturday. And I was sitting in the lobby of the television station, terribly hungry because it was out in the boonies,
mm-hmm.
and wondering what I was going to do next when suddenly I saw all these cars coming out of church. So I ran to the studio, opened it up, and threw a box down, and they were driving up, throwing in checks, money, and so forth, and we were getting it by mail. We collected $26,000. Now,
wow.
That's not a lot of money today.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't pay off, but we paid some of the debt
right.
of the film company so they could keep it going. Now, the end of that story is, that was in 1971. In
right.
1979, Ted sold that station for $21 million.
Wow.
And that was the seed money for CNN.
Oh, my God. Well, this is... this is America, I guess, or anywhere that you can, if you take a risk and you're very straightforward about that and you open yourself up to the people, as you suggested to him, they say it's like a field of dreams, right? If you build it, they will come. And especially if they feel some kind of involvement. Oh, imagine those $26,000 worth of people,
And he did send them the money, those that sent their name and address,
right.
with interest.
Right, okay. I might do the same thing. Actually, Ted is, and Ted and you are my idols. I started in 71 and in broadcasting, and I started with back when it was even before cable. Actually, my only stock I ever bought was Teleprompter, which was a cable company. And they said, this is going to be the future. And my little silly story is that I bought it at 36. The only stock I ever bought in my life. I'm really not a stock guy. And so I bought it at 36. And over the years, from 71 on to 20 years, it went from 36 down to 1. Okay? But me, I'm like the old-time kind of a person that once I do something, that's it. I hold on to it, okay? You should see my office. It's a real mess. And so I held on to it and went all the way back up until General Electric bought it at 38. I'm a winner. But when it was at 10, I said to my wife, and we put the money into these treasury notes that were solid kind of thing. I said, let's take out some money and buy 10,000 shares. We said, no, we're too scared. But the communications industry has changed. So you've been in it for all these years, and well, tell us about the book. So what does the book offer?
Well, it's a description of how Ted built his empire and how he was sabotaged from within.
Oy.
Because we had a history of succeeding, but there was an executive committee that was against him.
Oy.
And how they sabotaged my projects. But let me tell you one more story.
Please.
Ted had to build the headline news as a second 24-hour service,
right,
in order to prevent the networks from doing their own 24-hour news.
Okay.
And so he was just losing $1 million a month because it was so much to bear.
Sure.
And so he tried to sell CNN outside the country to see if there was any interest in there. And he hired someone from the Associated Press, and he tried for 2 years to sell some form of CNN and never made a single deal. And so he was so frustrated, he just quit. And so Ted throws me the Hail Mary pass again. And he says, Ted, don't worry. He says, you're probably not going to sell anything. It looks like they're not interested outside the U.S. in CNN.
Okay.
So since it was a losing cause, I figured I'd take my wife and go around the Pacific Rim. It would be a vacation. And so I went to Tokyo, Japan. I went to Hong Kong. I went to Sydney, Australia, and I went to New Zealand.
Uh-huh.
I showed them how to use CNN in television, and I came back with $6.5 million in contracts and cut his losses in half.
Wow. You know why I think you were successful in that? And can I throw a little antidote in here? I'll tell you why I think you're successful, and I hardly know you. We spoke previously some months ago when we had wanted to interview you, and then just yesterday, knowing that I was actually coming down to Atlanta, and I was so excited thinking that I would be able to put the video and talk to you and meet you and do the whole show with you, was that one thing that you said to me, and I respect this, so I said, however I can help you. And I think that's part of your character. However I can help you, I'm asking you to, can we do an interview with you? And your comment to me is, however I can help you. You have that kind of a way where you're of service, I feel, and I think people that are of service succeed in making sales and doing business, period. That's it.
Well, what Ted did, he forced me to be creative.
Okay.
He forced me to come up with ideas.
All right.
And that's what I'm good at.
Okay.
And you shouldn't have sent me that material because my brain is working overtime with ideas on how to help you.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm glad I sent it to you because yours is a good brain to be. Unless I'm ruining any of your brain power, I don't want to.
No, are you kidding?
Okay.
I'm stuck in this retirement binge.
Yes. Okay.
And you send me material to get me going, and you made it exciting for me.
Yeah, well, I'll be frank with you that, I have a vision. I don't know if it's similar, but when we get to talk about that, but, I really want to talk a little more about you and your book and things, but as I said, you and Ted, and Ted's recent success again, coming back, and I'm a friend with Laura, and I'm a friend with a lot of the people connected to Ted, and Ted was one of the first people that actually put some money into Good News as a donation, and so I'm very enamored.
He had his own program, Good News. I think the title was Good News or something similar to that.
From what I've been told, Ted Turner wanted to start a Good News broadcast network, okay? Somewhere I had heard that, or that his was part of his intention, and he did the Goodwill game. So, he's really, that's a believer in humanity.
Yes.
And that's good, and especially for people in the media, because the world is good. It's lots of good things going on.
Well, he wasn't successful with his programs on a local basis or in the U.S. because the competition was so high.
Sure.
With crime and sex and all sorts of other things.
Sure.
But on a global basis, your concept has tremendous potential.
And I'm a globally minded guy, and I did multicultural marketing and business for years. And so after the TV, CBS, PBS years, so I am like that global mindset, similar to what you have built. But you have, we did it. Our TV, our UHF channel is the web, okay? Because we started 10 years ago, and we got the world with the $70 URL, goodnewsbroadcast.com. We called it what we wanted, and we can stream video and audio. But initially, no one could see it. Very similar, probably, to even satellite download and so on. There is if you're using the web as a broadcasting media, it's probably quite similar to the early days of, VHF, UHF, cable, connections. How does the business grow? So getting back to tell me the 540 pages, you got a couple stories going on there.
Well, actually, 464 pages.
This was what the Barnes and Noble said.
I don't want to scare anyone.
It says trade cloth here. 540 pages in the Barnes and Noble backgrounder here. Okay, we got to get some more issues up here. So what are some more? Because I couldn't get the book today. I went to go and buy it, and they didn't have it in stock at this. It must sold out.
You'd have to order it.
Right. So tell me a little more about it.
Well, the book not only tells about the difficulties of cable, but Ted really is the one that started the growth of cable and his promotion of it. And, for example, making the Braves America's team. He was the gun that fired cable around the United States, and of course it grew from that. But he deserves a lot of credit for having done that. And he's a man with ideas, and the two of us coming together was like nitro and glycerin being poured into the same bottle.
I could see it. I could see it. You know, I heard him. He was over here at with the Paley Center for Media now, called the old former Museum of Broadcasting, right? And he was speaking, when they came out with the book, which is customers who bought this book, that's your book, right? We Changed the World, also bought Call Me Ted, that book, Napoleon Hill's book. You're in good company. You're Think and Grow Rich, and T-Bone Pickens' book, The First Billion is the Hardest. So that's what the research of Barnes & Noble says.
Ted and I didn't always agree.
We
had some terrific arguments.
That's where the nitro and the glycerin is, isn't it?
Yeah, for example, when we got the Braves and the Hawks, and actually at that time there was a hockey team too.
Okay.
And so I want to build a remote unit so we could do the remote on the road and so forth, and then do them here for the other teams. He was so against it.
Uh-huh.
He said, no, it's going to lose money. It's a losing proposition. And he fought me tooth and nail, and I couldn't do it. And he insisted on hiring this guy who would put together some cameras and equipment on a truck. He said, no, we'll use him. I said, I don't trust him. I don't think he's the kind of guy that has the character for this sort of thing. Well, one day in Houston, Texas, this guy in his truck never showed up till the sixth inning. That never happened. I mean, that the televised remote didn't start at the proper time.
Sure.
And that gave me an edge on Ted to convince him to let me buy some equipment in the truck.
Okay.
And so I got it started, and I started building it, and we ended up doing all the remotes for the networks, the
right.
NFL games and so forth. And he made a fortune on it.
Mm-hmm.
It became a separate business,
sure.
Company. And I tell the story of how I did that and how I ran to Florida, Tampa, Florida, when some manager took over a station. Like every manager, he learned that they had just bought a truck to build a remote unit. He said, we don't need any trucks around here. Get rid of it. So I ran down with the cash and drove it back.
Well, they always say it's good to be self-contained. If you can afford it, being self-contained is a good concept, because in this business it's very, very, very much needed. You need to know what you're doing, and you need to have the materials there to make the product, basically, I guess, is the concept of what you saw. Very exciting kinds of things. Why don't we this is going to be like our part one of, I really want to continue our conversation. This is we got about 20 or so minutes here for this. Is good for the web broadcast at this moment. Sidney, if that's okay with you.
Sure, whatever you want.
And what? Here we go again. This is the beauty of this guy. So the book is called "We Changed the World" by Sidney Pike, Memoirs of a CNN Satellite Pioneer. The acclaims for the book are outstanding, as they should be, and for the man as well. So, Sidney, let me ask you one last question for this interview, and then we're going to continue on our conversation. But for this is, what's good news for you? What's good news?
Well, good news is finding a way to communicate with the population around the world and give them ideas on how to change their life and how to be successful and how to bring up their children so they don't have bad ideas about other people. That's the good news for me, and that's what I'm interested in.
Sidney, thank you very much. It couldn't be stated any more brilliantly and perfectly and kindly and givingly. So thank you for sharing good news with your good news with good news today, and we look forward to, as I say, part 2 in our continued conversation. Thanks so much, Sidney.
Thank you.